Part 3, Chapter 13. No Garden for Wilted Flowers. Darkness. Darkness surrounded me entirely. The air held a frosty bite along with a feeling of complete loneliness. The shadows around me began to squirm and rub against my shoulders and hair, absorbing me slowly. My mortal being faded deeper into the inky black until I caught a sign of a warm dome of light before me. No slow ignition, no warning, just there. "Make a wish, honey," a woman spoke gently, echoing on and on. "Go ahead and blow out the candles." Another voice, this one a man. Two familiar voices prodded my brain, both instructing me, caring for me, urging me. I sat in a dark room, now aware of what exactly sat beside me in the dark. The frail orange light softly glowed in the center of the table between us, slightly illuminating the two sitting to my right. A third voice suddenly appeared, and with it came another mass to my left. "Go ahead, Kim. Show him who's boss." This one was younger, much more innocent, almost childlike. Set on a dark wooden table before me was an off-white frosted cake. I could barely make out the cake beneath the orange flare of candles, let alone any specific details about it. Each of these voices was familiar to me, some more than others. I found myself unable to question their requests, almost like my motions were scripted and out of my control. Following the instructions laid out before me, I took in a deep breath and blew out the candles. 6 dead wax stumps emitted a frail smoke from the wick. The sulfuric smell filled my nostrils and dried on the back of my tongue. My eyes watered. All 3 voices cheered for me simultaneously. 2 of the 3 began clapping. One of the frailer-looking figures moved forward to set the cake to the side, but just as they were about to move it, the candles suddenly lit up again. Bright orange flames revealed the dark room again. The cheering stopped, and an eerie pessimism lingered. "I thought I told you to get the regular candles." The woman's voice sounded annoyed. "All those damn candles looked the same, Rachel. I was in a rush." He defended himself. "Rachel," I repeated. All of a sudden, the table and the group of shadows seemed to get distant. My vision became warped like a fisheye lens, and a light humming buzzed in my skull. All the faces were shrouded still, though I could make out who they were by their voices. My mother sighed. "No harm done, I guess." Mr. Avery, why did the candles turn on again?" The child spoke. She started. "Aren't they cool? They're called—" "Hun, I think Joseph asked me about the candles." He chuckled. "They're called trick candles. They reignite when they get blown out." "Oh, how many times do you have to blow them out?" Joey asked naively. "Who knows? Maybe they will never go out. They say that trick candles are magic, and if a child can't blow them out completely in 3 tries, then they will never grow up," she said with a happy grin. Joey's eyes widened in excitement. "That's cool. Go on, Kim. Try it again." I shuffled awkwardly in my seat. My mouth would not open to speak. The entire scene played to me, like I was watching, but still acting it out against my will. "Give it a try, sweetheart," she said to me. Reluctantly, I took in a deep breath. This time, it took 2 tries to blow them all out. Just like before, all went dark, and the feeling of isolation returned. The voices stopped when the candles were out. When the emptiness appeared, only whispers remained. Whispers I could not understand. Within 10 seconds, the candles were alive once more. "All right, last try," Joey's voice echoed. My dad played along. "If they don't light up again, then you don't have to grow up." I could hear disembodied, echoing words around me, muttering random phrases every time somebody spoke. I hesitated, looking around at their faces. I could not see them. Their bodies were there, but their faces were still dark. Come on, Kim. What's wrong? Don't you want to be a kid forever? Forever. That word echoed in my head, over and over and over, shattered and lingering. Never grow up. Never face adulthood. Be a kid, young and happy and innocent, until I die. Unlike before, I felt my movements float like I was in water. No longer did I follow the path predetermined. I had control of my actions. I looked around in the dark, feeling eyes all over me, not just theirs. My mother's voice gripped me. Kiki, what's wrong?
Everything is wrong,
a voice hissed. Her silhouette leaned in toward me, her face still hidden. I felt my cheeks start to get hot. My jaw began to tremble. Joey exclaimed, "If you blow them out for good this time, then you can stay here. You won't have to get old." As he finished his sentence, his voice faded out and his body disappeared altogether. My dad spoke very softly, comforting. "If the candle comes back to life, then you will have to face it." His voice became malicious, twisted. He too began to fade at the end of his words until he was erased.
"You've come,"
something else whispered. All that was left was her and I. The black hole that was her face stared at me. I stared right back, searching for something human, something I could recognize as real. My trembling face slowly descended into sorrow. My inexplicably dry mouth trembled as I attempted to force movement. Invisible stitches held on like a ghost of who I am to become. Keeping quiet my whole life. Lying. Remaining abstinent to reality. Not anymore. "Mama, is that really you?" I asked, just as tears began to drip down my face. She cocked her head, seeming surprised. "Of course, Kiki. It's me," she giggled. That faint whisper completed its thought.
To join us."
"I don't want to grow up, Mom," I cried. My childhood body shook, and my stomach hurt, feeling shrunken down and fragile. "I want to stay here, forever, with you, Dad, and Joey." My shoulders bounced while the tears flowed, dripping onto my legs. "If that's so, then just give those candles a big huff." I heard a smile in her voice.
"Death stuck."
"But what if—" I started. "Don't you worry about a thing, darling. Everything will be okay," she promised, and she too began to fade. "Everything will be okay." I watched her body get taken by the surrounding black, and I felt scared. "Please don't go," I whimpered. Despite my plea, she was gone. The haunting whispers recited verses of hell and torment, maddening cackles and demented shrieks. The darkness itself had sprung to life, reaching out for my tender flesh, starving. My eyes shut, and weighted tears fell. I was cold. I pulled my knees to my chest and hugged them tight, trying to keep warm, fighting the abandonment. The cake on the table had vanished, but the candles remained. Gently flickering with an endless wick, they floated in the abyss before me. 6 dimly lit sticks were all that kept the darkness at bay. I cried still. The longer I sat in this chair and ignored the candles, the louder the whispers grew. Every voice stabbed my ears, trying to make me understand. One thing stuck with me. One thing gave me solace. Her final words. "Everything will be okay." It was those words that gave me the strength to do what needed to be done. It was my choice. It had always been my choice. I lifted my head and watched the fire waver and spark. It's my choice. I took in a deep, deep breath and held it. Held it until my face turned blue and air began to leak from my nose. I blew out the candles. Darkness still, breathing stifled by a mound of dirt surrounding my face. My restriction of air did not last as Tansu quickly came to my side and rolled me onto my back, allowing the light from above to blind my clouded vision. Dust and blood coated my raw skin, and I desperately clung onto consciousness. My eyes lightly closed. She's there.
Oh my god, Kim, talk to me.
Her words to me came as a whisper spoken through a speaker 100 feet away. Eyes baggy and dark, every vein pushed to the surface of my pale skin. My fingers dug into the damp soil while my body remained motionless, unable to move anything else. With enough effort, I managed to open my eyes to see the blurry shape that was Tansu above me. I tried to speak, but fell short. My lips chapped and blue. My few words came in bursts, with a hot exhale.
Candles.
What? She asked, frightened and alarmed.
I'm okay.
When I spoke, a searing pain stabbed the roots of my eyeballs. I couldn't see it, but I could feel a hot stream of blood rush out from under my lids, falling out, then immediately redirecting down the side of my cheeks and dripping to the ground. She cupped her hands over her mouth.
Oh my god,
She whined, then shook her head from side to side.
You're fine. Don't worry, Kim. You're fine.
She choked back tears. I blinked. My sandpaper eyes burned as my eyelids scraped against them. The vision remained, but my eyes throbbed immensely.
I can't move,
I muttered. My breathing slowed for a moment, and I felt a gentle sleep try to take me. Blackness blanketed my sight, but opened again quickly, trying to stay awake. Tansu sat beside me, lightly panting and rubbing her ribs beneath her armpit. She then leaned in to move the hair out of my face. I couldn't feel her touch.
Just rest here for now,
she whispered, keeping her hopes high. The silence was my answer. For a minute, we both sat still, letting the memories of recent events settle, burrowing into a permanent place in our minds where they would remain forever. In this time of solace, it was perfectly clear to me that Alice was dead. I could no longer feel her presence, the raging anger, the electric shock of her voice. The crowded presence in my soul was gone. I felt empty. Emptier than I have ever felt in my entire life. With the emptiness came the pain. Her death brought all the wounds to surface, but on top of that, I felt sadness. Just like that, she was gone forever, and I wanted to cry for her, because despite everything, she was like a rotten sister to me, twisted and cruel, but somehow caring in her own way. The cold reality of this densified my pitted sorrow.
We need to get this hole in your face cleaned up. And your shoulder,
she said, sounding nauseous. She wanted to keep me listening to her voice, keep me attentive and awake, and I think she focused more on that cut in particular, seeing how she caused it. What she didn't understand was how hard it was to focus on anything except for the erupting, blistering pain that raped my entire body. The welcoming invitation of sleep was difficult to fight, and her voice was distant now, more than ever. As of this moment, I'm unsure if my own inner power existed at all, or simply went dormant. Either way, it wasn't going to save me. She was brushing her hand across my hair, trying to comfort me. Through the quiet wind that remained persistent around us, I felt the urge to speak. My first attempt at words fell short, only pushing out a raspy mumble. She heard this and leaned in closer. I licked my lips and tried to clear my throat, but the grinding of my muscles only made my mouth wet with blood. I managed to cough out,
I'm sorry. Please, don't apologize. You did nothing wrong.
I shook my head sideways with a tremble on my lips. There are so many things I want to apologize for. Nightmares to give credence with admittance. But how could I possibly find the words? It's all just blips and buzzing. Those 2 words carried such a burden, a weight she may never know. With my fleeting strength, I lifted my hand up and opened it. She took it in hers quickly. I squeezed it as tight as I could. My entire arm shook viciously with the agony I was in, and as my arm quaked, hers was being manipulated along with it. The reality of the situation was crashing through her mind. Unexpectedly, I felt a razor-like tear open wide in my stomach. My body tensed up, and an unimaginable pain ripped through me. A fiery twinge held my muscles tight, making even my immobilized body crunch inward and go through a small seizure. Everything started to get fuzzy and unbelievably cold. Her eyes widened, and she clasped my hand between both of hers. Now panicking, she began to recite a prayer in a hushed tone. My small thrash halted, and my body flattened out on the ground again. There were a few seconds where I was in a dark state. I forgot where I was, who I was. Everything went blank in my head, but I saw her face through the blur. Then I gazed past her head for a moment, just to get a glimpse of the sun's rays shining through the clouds and trees behind her. The chirping of the birds, a plane that flew overhead. Lovely, normal sounds. These few sounds would be my last to hear. I took it all in as my mind slowly returned. With my mind resetting once more, a new thought was brought forward, completely out of context and had nothing to do with the situation. This thought burned in my mind. It always had, but never found its way into words until now.
Dansu, can I ask you something?
I gasped.
Ask me. Yes, of course,
she replied quickly.
It seems dumb now, but why do you do that thing with your hand? Thing with my hand? Yeah, that odd little fist. I've always wondered.
I wheezed slightly. She smiled a little.
You could have asked me at any time, and you choose now?
She giggled with wet eyes.
It's something I do to feel closer to my dad. It was our own personal pinky swear. His 2 fingers wrapped around my thumb. I do it when I feel afraid, so it's like he's still here with me.
Her words sank at the end. In the background, thin, close-together trees scraped against one another, their leaves brushing and twisting.
That's nice,
I whispered, my eyes fading in and out. I could feel my brain dimming. She sniffled and looked at our surroundings.
Okay, that's enough sad talk. We need to get moving again. I'm sure if we go a little further in that direction, we'll reach the road. Then we'll get you help,
she stated. Her determination was inspiring, but I couldn't let her on like this anymore. I knew my fate.
It's no use,
I coughed.
What do you mean? I want you to go. Go to the road alone and flag down help. It will be faster if you go alone, then come back,
I instructed her. She shook her head in protest.
No way! Are you kidding? I won't leave you.
She refused skittishly. I paused, hearing the anxiety rise high in her voice. She doesn't get it.
Then you can sit here and watch me die,
I said with hollow eyes. That made her go quiet and think. I started. My throat began closing up. My lungs weren't working properly. It felt like my lungs were stuffed full of steel wool, making it impossible to keep a full breath. With a violent cough, blood pushed through my gums and out of my mouth.
I'm scared. I don't want to die.
She didn't say anything, just looked at me, showing a red face and wet eyes. She seemed lost in words and spirit. My eyelids felt heavy. I let them ease shut for a moment.
Please,
I begged.
Okay, I'll go. But don't you dare.
She choked. I chuckled with a broken smile, grinding out more words.
I'll be here, I promise.
She gave my hand a final squeeze and then placed it by my side. At the same time, she grabbed Joey's jacket from the ground beside me and placed it over my torso, hiding the wounds and holding in fragile heat. She half stood, then paused and crouched back down. She leaned in close, locked eyes with me for what seemed like an eternity, then slowly pressed her lips to my forehead and held them there for a few seconds. Her mouth was trembling, and the air from her nose was dry. She pulled away slowly.
I will be right back.
She stood at a slant and made an unstable dash up the pathway. I listened to her footsteps in the dirt. They became more and more distant until they disappeared altogether. I was alone. Now truly alone, for the very first time in over a year. In a way, I missed the silence. It was, at the moment, nostalgic to me. I waited, trying to hold on, but my body was purging itself of all good feelings, leaving only the terrible pain that he gave me. I thought about Christine, and everything she said to me. This carried my lingering mind to all the tuffle I never met, and how glad I am that I didn't. Which brought me around to Alice. I never said goodbye to her, but at least I thanked her for what it was worth. I wonder what would happen to her, dying like that when she never existed in this world. What would become of her? What would become of all the tuffle when they leave here? What would happen to me? Tantu has been gone for a long time. 10 minutes. I counted every second as best I could. Many times I thought I heard her voice call to me. Footsteps and car brakes had been among these imaginary noises, except none were real. Or maybe they were. Maybe in the real world, I'm already dead, and this is my punishment, to lie here forever, waiting for help. My own personal hell. Loneliness. I knew that by the time she found help, it wouldn't make a difference. A rush of smooth, cool wind brushed against my pale skin. Frail leaves bounced all over and around me. The dry skipping accompanied by the fresh air calmed my senses and allowed them to slow and relax. Every inch of my skin began to numb and tighten, a persistent daydream of nihility. I always thought death would be a lot like watching TV when the power goes out. Sudden silence, vast, detailed emptiness. Disembodied for just a moment in a sheet of welcoming black. Anticipation for a spark. I never imagined this, to be bleeding out alone in a barren forest. To be a wilted flower, a discarded tool. I always thought my life was meaningless, vapid and null. But somehow, through evil and tribulation, purpose found me. In the end, I wasn't a waste of space or a burden. I was exactly what I needed to be. A very small ray of sunlight made its way through the thick clouds and trees, bringing a glow to my eyelids from the inviting light, a smile to the sky, and I exhaled.
Everything is okay.